if you look at the quitting of something, it's a very funny thing. Because you get a pat on the back out here in society when you quit something that you may have been doing that was harmful, like drinking, smoking, overeating. Boy, the society likes to thank you. Not thank you. They like to give you a pat on the back and give you some congratulations because you have quit something that was leading to some kind of physical problem or some kind of psychological disorder that you were doing. And so you become conditioned to believe that the reversal of the doing of something negative, turning the reversal of that, doing the positive, that boy, that is a good thing. That's something that you really want to do, because then you get a pat on the back from society. And then when we quit drinking and we all pat each other on the back, oh, congratulations. So you become conditioned to that. And then what does that do? That conditions you to possibly, knowingly or not, to want to do the behavior that leads to the thing that gets the recognition and the pat on the back. That's what it does. But yet, the people giving you the pat on the back and you, the person receiving the pat on the back, believe that your quitting of something has had something to do with some kind of change that has appeared in your life. When the fact is that quitting of something is the absolute, total, identical thing as the doing of the something. As the repetitive doing, so is the repetitive not doing. Therefore, it is not to be congratulated that someone has quit doing something, that you have quit doing something, because quitting is not a result of fundamental psychological change or order. Now, it may also not be it is a result of that, okay? The quitting is a result of that. But quitting can also be done not as a result of that, the quitting alone. And then the people will say, well, the quitting alone has saved your life. Now, they're talking about the material world. They're not talking about the psychological world. They may think they are. They may think they're talking about both, but they're not. Because the quitting of something without a fundamental change, without an insight, is not only not saving your life, it's possibly killing you. Because that is, I don't know if there's a term in psychology, self-enabling. That's self-enabling. Accepting yourself for whatever the thing is that you're doing, that is healthy. That's order. Okay? Not accepting yourself and then trying to change, that is disorder and conflict. So in order to try to repair one war that you've got going on inside your head, you are going to start another war. Now what's interesting, or maybe not, I don't know, depending on who you are, is in my little introduction talking about war games, where I talked about you can start another war immediately after the completion of the last war. Well, I wasn't taking into consideration that, hell, you can start 1,000 wars at the same time. you can overlap them all, or many of them are overlapped through time, through linear time. So they're all overlapped, and it's a network of wars that you have going on with yourself. And so then you're going to set up another war with yourself so that you can quit this thing that you're doing that everybody in society is criticizing, they're critical about. Okay? And what's funny in society, and a lot of times they are just curiosities, but sometimes, and probably most of the time, they are judgments, is that if you are in society and you are drinking obnoxiously and ridiculously, well, people are giving you their attention and they're judging you. Yet when you quit that behavior and say, no, absolutely not, no more of that nonsense, then you are judged and criticized on a different level. Now, maybe not people, okay, maybe not that you're judged and criticized, but it's the opposite of that, but it's the same. You're patted on the back. You get a pat on the back. Which all that does is reinforce the quitting. Now, see, a lot of people would hear that and go, well, that's okay, that's great. Well, no, it is not great. It is not great. If you believe that you have accomplished something when you have not, then you are not going to continue on to the completion of the actual thing. Like being stuck on religion, stuck at the book, can't get to the truth. I mean, isn't that amazing that you would be stuck, that you would have the ability to see the truth, yet you would allow yourself to keep the door closed, knowing that the door can be opened? That's psychotic. So don't do that. But this construct that you're going to build, where you're going to quit something that you are doing, is not going to work. I don't mean that you're not going to have stopped doing the thing. The thing may end. But the psychological disorder which was driving the thing is not going to end. And therefore, it is only going to reappear somewhere else in a different way. It will remanifest itself differently. So then you'll be stuck all over again. Yet this time in a different situation that you don't understand, where you have to start over again. It's as if you're continually having to start over, because not only are you quitting, but then you are remanifesting in a different way, unless you're remanifesting in the same way. But here, what's interesting is if you look at it, when you remanifest in the same way, the person would appear to also have to relearn the whole thing again, even though it's the exact same subject matter. Because the mind is creating all this. The landscape of the mind is infinite and immediate. Infinite and immediate. Okay, I'm going to change that. I don't like that. I think it sounds good. If you're going to have a bumper sticker, that sounds really good. Infinite and immediate. But it's not infinite. It's endless. It's endless and immediate. It's not infinite. It's endless. Those are two different things, which I've talked about before. We won't go into, but it's endless and infinite. I mean, endless. So, meaning it's never ending, as opposed to infinite, which is looping back on itself. When you get stuck in, you're stuck in a trap when you're on an endless pattern, an endless loop that never ends. Now, okay, boy, it gets confusing if you start saying, because infinity appears to be an endless loop, but it is not. It circles back on itself. It is not endless. Within infinity, there is no need for information. There's no need for information. There's no need for the understanding of any of this nonsense that we're talking about. Because in fact it is nonsense. Every word that I say is complete nonsense because it is words which I am trying to use to describe a state of being which has been set up by the mind, which is complete nonsense. So therefore the words describing the nonsense are nonsense. Without the nonsense, no need for the nonsensical words. So the final objective, in a certain way, although there really isn't such a thing, with this looking into yourself is the complete and total disappearance of yourself. Now, one must realize that if there is a complete disappearance of self, that this thing we're talking about that you are struggling with, that it's a constant pattern and struggle, that also disappears. You must understand that, because that is part of the program which has been built into the you part, the part we're talking about disappearing. These things lead into other discussions which are a lot of the discussions that we have are very practical in nature. They seem practical, and I prefer to keep them as practical as possible. However, it all leads to a place that is absolutely based on the mind and what we can understand, that is completely impractical, totally impractical, based on our perception, or what we have been programmed to understand and believe. Meaning that there is the yourself that we want to remove. Okay? There's that part. But then there is, and then there's your physical body. Okay? The yourself you want to remove is part of your mind, because it is a product of thought. So therefore it's part of your mind, but see, thought has taken over the mind. And so therefore we believe that the mind is thought, not correct. Not correct by any means. No, the mind is like a toolbox within which is thought. Thought just is a little tool in the toolbox. We don't understand that. We think that thought is the mind. The yourself that we are removing, which is then, no, wait, we'll start over here. Yourself, before we remove it, is part of your body, yet disconnected. Yet there is a third entity, which is the entity which is doing all this work, which is separating these two and understanding which is understanding that these two are separated. And which is saying, okay, that yourself, the who I am, needs to be removed. That is not the one I'm talking about, the third entity, that is a different dimension. That's where I'm saying this becomes impractical sounding. Everything we're talking about leads into that there is another dimension of being. That sounds crazy sounding. And it doesn't sound practical, but it is. And it is when it becomes practical and your understanding of it is when it becomes real. Where you go, okay, I see it. I see what it is. So the third dimension, which is the one which is looking at all this and saying, okay, I've got to get rid of myself. So what you've got to understand is I'm not telling you that when the yourself disappears, that you totally disappear. I'm saying that the part of you that is causing all of these problems disappears. The part of you that's causing the repetitive usage of drugs and alcohol, tobacco, food, that all disappears. And then what is left is what is actual. What is actual. That stuff is gone. You've built all that stuff. It's garbage. It's gone away. And now you're left with what actually is, which is fantastic, which is like the best gift given to anybody. So it's important to understand that, because it's easy for people to start to feel like they're going to lose some kind of identity, which they are, which is fine. That's what you want. You want to lose your identity completely. That is, yes, that has to go, because that is what is attaching you. You are attached to your identity. You must see that what you've done is your identity is set up as a separate entity from yourself, and it is not. It is in the way that you've set it up and projected it, in the same way that the projected God is not actually an entity. It's projected. But what it points to is that there is a real entity, which is you and which is God. So we're trying to get through the projection to the real actuality, which is what you are, who you are. See how I've said it? I'm conditioned. Whatever that is right now, okay, whatever it is now, because it is within that. And hey, look, if you're a complete total piece of shit now, let's say you are, that you take advantage of people and you use people and you hurt people intentionally for your own gain. Let's say you're someone like that, like the worst kind of person that there is. You can right now change right now the fundamental change, which is the action. There is nothing you need to do. Okay, so what happens then? You've got the fundamental change, pow, because you see that what's going on is not only not working for the people that you're abusing, it's not working for you. That is actually, it's circling back to you, and that's why you're having psychological disorder. So pow, fundamental insight, which leads to, okay, now we've gone away from observation. Once I say which leads to, now we've gone back into the movement of thought. Now that's okay. We just need to understand that the movement, once we jump back into the movement of thought, we have now jumped out of the fundamental insight part. Okay, we need to understand the important part here. The insight is the important part. The jumping back into the stream of thought and then taking action is not important. It is not, it is totally and wholly unimportant. Because organically, the things that you have destroyed before you have had your insight, you will correct properly once you have had your insight. And it is not through, it is not, and it will be through the movement of thought, because you will think about the insight. Okay, but it will not be the result of the action. The change is not a result of the action. The change is a result of the insight, which required you to go nowhere, and then you changed. Now, then you roll back into linear time. Anytime you roll into the movement of thought, you're rolling back into the movement of time, which that is where your physical and material world is going to repair itself. It's going to have to be over linear time. Let's say you eat too much, you're very heavy. You come to some pivotal insights. You don't go on a diet. You have an insight. That is what's going to lead to your weight loss. So the insight is the action. And the weight loss is not the action. The weight loss is the result of the insight, which is a organic evolution within the material world. The action was the insight. because that's where all of the energy was not stored up. It's like you took the energy. You didn't have it before. You had the insight, and now, and it's through that insight with which you have been filled with this energy, which you do not, you're not tapping into it. You're not stabbing that balloon of energy with a knife. You're tying it off so that you have the energy, and the energy stays with you as you roll through the material world, and everything changes. So let's get rolling.